What's up? Let's play Fly Me to the Moon. I want to watch good guitarist YouTube channel. Fly Me to the Moon guitar tutorial easy version. It is open chord. At first, don't forget to tune the guitar.
Taking our A minor shape, and then we're taking our ring finger off of it, so we only have 2 fingers down. Then we're going to switch to a D minor shape, and we're basically going to take these 2 fingers and move them down that way, and then we can add our finger down the B string to complete the shape. You can also do a D minor 7 if you're up for the challenge, where we bar the first fret of the top 2 strings, and then we put your second finger down on the second fret of the G string. And that would sound a little bit more jazzy, or fit the mood a bit better, but if you're not up for that, you can always just play plain old D minor. Then we have a G chord, and I'm just going to play it like this. 3rd fret of the thickest string, 3rd fret of the highest string, just with 2 fingers. Because that's going to make our next switch a lot easier.
Only
to our C major 7 chord. That's just a C chord, but I took off my first finger. So if you're familiar with the basic shapes, it's not too difficult so far. Let's recap. We're just going to play the first 4 measures of the song. We start with A minor 7. Then we get those 2 fingers, and then we make our D minor shape.
D minor 7. G.
Then we go like that. We'll throw it into G. So you might need to practice going from D minor into G. And then C major 7.
C major 7.
And you're welcome to play G any other way that you like, as long as you keep it consistent, you know. It doesn't really matter if you do it in a specific way or not. It matters that you do it the same way over and over again, so that you can build up consistent muscle memory and develop accuracy with your shapes. So let's take a moment and work our way through those 4 chord shapes, downstrokes, starting off on A minor 7. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. Let's see if we break. 1, 2, get ready. 3, 4. Again. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. G, 2, this way, and then C major 7. Right on. So that's basically half the song. We're going to go between that little chord progression and then another one, which I'm going to show you right now. First we have F, and we can play it this way. It's a simpler version of it. What we're doing here is we're skipping the first string, and we're going to put our index on the first fret of the B string. Our middle goes on the 2nd fret of the G string. Then our pinky finger goes on the 3rd fret of the D string. And finally our ring finger just above it on the 3rd fret of the A string. I'm going to let my thumb lightly touch the thickest string. It's nice to do this because then it's muted and it doesn't matter if you accidentally hit it. You know, some people, I've gotten some emails from some people saying that their thumb doesn't necessarily reach over the top, and that's fine. You can just avoid strumming it, and that's the other way to, get that string out of the picture. Ultimately, we don't want that happening. And the highest string, you can leave it open. It actually sounds really nice in this context. Nice and airy and jazzy. It's an F major 7 that way, but if it's muted, it still sounds fine, either way. So that's our F chord. Then we're going to go to a B half diminished chord. We're playing the 2nd fret fret of the A string with our first
B
finger.
half
Then we're going to put
diminished.
our third finger on the third fret of the next string. And then our middle finger on the second fret of the G string. And that's like our D chord. So you could almost start it this way. You could start by playing a regular old D major chord. And then you move it over 1, 2 times. So that's the part I want you to put down first, because most people have the muscle memory for their D major chord. So we're putting it down here with our index on the second fret of the A string, and then we add our pinky to the third fret of the B string. So I want you to think about it that way. D chord plus pinky on the third fret. That's our B half diminished chord. And if your index finger lightly touches that string to mute it, that's great. That's very helpful.
Oh,
And then we're going to leave our pinky finger down. We're going to pivot off that finger into an E7 chord. So I'm making an E chord, and my pinky was the 7. It was already down from that previous chord. So pivot. And I want you to practice just going between those two directions. You know, these fingers are basically making like a D shape, and then they go over and over again. And you might have to readjust where your thumb is as you switch, just so you can get the right leverage. You know, if you leave your thumb
seven.
it's really hard to reach. You have to let it
Oh,
get your elbow in for that.
And
With a half diminished chord, your elbow goes out of the At least that's how it works with my anatomy. You know, everyone's
minus 7.
different. Your arms might not have the same ratio of length between your fingers and your elbow or whatever, right? So go through it, find what feels comfortable on each of those shapes, and just go through the motions over and over again. And then finally, from that E7 chord, we go back to A minor 7, which we've already played. It's an easy transition from E7. You know, you just leave the first and second finger down.
E major plus
With these chord shapes now. We have F,
minus 7.
and then we switch to B half
E7
chord plus our pinky there.
and go back
And
to F.
you'll probably have to go from F to that chord 1,000 times before it starts feeling comfortable, and that's fine. You know, that's what practice is for. So we go from F to half diminished, leave our pinky down. So take a minute. Those 4 chords. Now we're going to play 4 strokes each. You know, and just practice transitioning between those ones, starting on F. 1, 2, 3, 4. So there is one other chord shape that we have to learn to complete this tune, but we'll leave that for later. Now let's just take everything that we've learned so far and practice it downstrokes only in order. This is pretty much the song. There's just a couple little variations that we have to figure out, and then we'll have the entire thing. So even though it look like we're having one lesson, this is pretty much the bulk of it. Let's try this out, starting off on A minor 7, downstrokes only. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we have enough of the chords down that the strumming pattern now. It goes like this. I'll do it a little bit slower. So we go down on beat 1, down up on beat 2, down up on beat 4. So it's the same thing 2 times. You fill up all the beats. First, I want you to work on motions. Just each number either has a downstroke or a down up. On 1 we went down, and on 2 we went down up. So just do that a little bit, just going 1, 2, 3, 4, down, down, up, down, down. Okay, get used to it. From there, a swing feeling. There's two universal feels. There's a straight feel, which is where it's really mechanical and everything's even. Down, down, up, down, down, up. Everything's like that. There's a swing feel where it's like the downstrokes are a bit longer. So the downstrokes are longer. And that's, what you would use for like blues, country, jazz, swing feel. And there's swing music in jazz, and that's kind of where this comes from. There's many ways to that feel. Downstrokes are longer, and we add into our
hockey break.
And then you apply that to the pattern. And once you're comfortable with that, to the chord settings, we can put it together with a progression. Let's do it. Starting on A minor. 1, 2, 3, 4. That is definitely the hardest part of the tune. The first 8 measures. At this point, we're just going to be reusing some chords. One more shape that we have to learn. Let's just take a look at the next 4 measures. We're going to go D minor, G, C. We've already done this exact sequence before. Before we went A minor, D minor, G, C. Now we're basically chopping off the Then we go to A7. So let's check that out. From C major 7, we can leave our middle finger and we put our ring finger. That gives us A7. Work that out a little bit, and then we can put it into our progression. To E7. So D minor, G, C, E this time. Take a sec, work your way from C major 7 to E7, and then we can put that into a progression. 1, 2, 3, 4. Watch this, see what's going on, and then try it with me afterwards. So starting on D minor. 1,
C major 7, 7.
That and put it together with the first thing we practiced, that's the whole song. So let's do that now, nice and slow.
Right, let's
you can always
play
just
the
watch
whole
it,
song.
see what's going on, try it. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's the only difference. So I recommend practicing just taking on guitar, you don't have to hear where the changes lie. To start trying to play the original. So I want you to just practice the chord progression just like that. Otherwise, have a fun time practicing.
Alright, let's play. Alright, thank you for watching. Let's practice together. Drop like and subscribe. What's up? Let's play Flying to the Moon. I can run from Swift Lesson channel on YouTube. Flying to the Moon, just Chord Melody Rhythm Guitar Lesson. Let's get started.
Started breaking down our chord melody intro. Today I'm jamming on this beautiful nylon string guitar. It is the GK Studio Negra by Cordova. I got this yesterday at Rudy's Music Store in NYC, and I am quickly falling in love with this guitar. It's absolutely awesome. So I'm going to put a link down in the description to the Sweetwater page for this guitar. Alright, now, getting into the intro, we're going to break it up into 6 lines of music, starting with an optional diminished intro that I use to set the mood. It sounds like this.
This kind is
Okay, so that started off sliding on the low E string. You can slide from the 12th fret down, then play the open E string. Next, we're going to ascend up the fretboard. The chord shapes are as follows. E dominant 7. That's 2, 4, 3, 4. The E7 shape rooted off of the D string. Next, we're going to go up to a diminished shape. It's going to be a G sharp diminished. That's a zigzag shape, 6, 7, 6, 7. Now the cool thing about these diminished chords, these full diminished chords, is that you can move them by minor thirds, and it's going to be the exact same harmony. You're just kind of rearranging the intervals. Okay, so you can always do that whenever you have a diminished chord shape. Alright, so now we're going to try to kind of make this pseudo Raschiato effect. Alright, strumming through the chord and then grabbing the high E string with the middle finger, hybrid picking. Alright, and then next I invite you to kind of alternate back and forth between these chord shapes. One more time. And then just stop right there in the 12th fret position. Okay, that's going to be the perfect chord to create a cliffhanger, and then get ourselves into line number 1 of our official chord melody intro. Okay, this is the next part, getting ourselves into that iconic melody.
Oh, it's difficult.
Okay, it's a little complicated, but it's definitely approachable and obtainable. So we're starting off hitting an A minor 7 chord shape. That's frets 0, 5, 5, 5, 8. It's very, very helpful to picture the other positions of the A minor 7 or A minor bar chord shapes, and also the overlapping A natural minor scale where this melody is being born from. So you're going to strum that chord, and that gives us our first melody note, 8th fret high E string. Then we're going down to 7, 5, 8, and then that moves us into the D minor 7 harmony. That's going to be frets 5, 7, 5, 6, bar chord shape. Let that ring a little bit before moving into this diminished shape. So I strummed the D minor 7 chord shape, then played 8th fret with the pinky on the B string, and then I slide up a full step and grab myself F sharp diminished 7. That's going to be frets 9, 10, 8, 10, and then I'm going to grab the 8th fret of the high E string for my melody note. Alright, that's tricky, but totally worth it and very, very gratifying to get down. One more time. D minor 7, 8 diminished, 8 on the high E, and then the next measure. Moving ourselves down to C major 7. So that began strumming a G dominant 7 chord, bar chord shape. That's frets 10, 12, 10 with the bar, 12. Next 10 on the B string by itself. If you want, you can just vibrato that note before playing these beautiful little harmonies here. Okay, so right there I'm fretting 9, 10, 8. Then 6, 7, 6. D, G, and B strings. So alright, before playing C major 7, 3 on the A, 2 on the D, and then all open strings underneath that. Okay, that's your first line of music. Let's play it real slow and see if you can get it down. Get started with the A minor 7, D minor 7, diminished, G7.
I cannot remember the voice.
Now here I like to throw in an
Wizard.
optional little lick just to grab the attention of my listener. Alright, so I strummed 9, 8, and 7 together, and then did a hammer pull 7, 8, 7. Then I'm going to go down that arpeggio 8, 9, 10. Alright, and then play a little on the D string there. So, okay, you add it into context. Let it ring in. Alright, that gets us back into the melody. We're going to play F major 7. Okay, so the F major 7 chord, that's going to be frets 8, 10, 9, 10. Every single major 7 bar chord in the book rooted off of the A string. That's important because we're going to recycle it in a second. So strum the chord, then pluck the B string by itself, 8, 8 using the bar, D minor 7, same thing, then C major 7, recycling that chord shape, putting it on the 3rd fret position, and then same thing, strumming it and then plucking the B string. So far you have. Alright then, let's get spicy with it. Alright, so there I played B half diminished. 2, 3, 2, 3. Strum that chord nice and slow. Open high A. And then 1 sliding up to 5. Before setting up the next movement and the next line of tablature by striking the low E string. Okay, put all of line number 2 together. It should sound like this. Nice and slow, back to the melody. Okay, and lines 1 and 2 together. Here's what we have so far in this chord melody intro. The lick. F major 7. Alright, now we have the next line of tablature, which one more time is going to look and sound like this.
It's really difficult. Maybe I need to practice again. At first, it might be better to understand these bar chords, like A minor 7. And here's like high things like around here. So maybe it's better to figure out the like scale position, chord position, and some adding some. It's nice to know just this kind of possibility of go expand the playing. So like and subscribe. What's up? Let's play Fly Me to the Moon and Run Home Swift Lessons. Fly Me to the Moon, Just Chord Melody Rhythm Guitar Lesson. I run home, line 3, It's around 12 minutes.
Alright, so I'm taking some liberties with this. It's also going to get us into... Alright, the next chord change as well. So I began striking that low E string, that's how we ended line 2. Then we're going to grab a piece of E7, 4, 3, 4, before going down to the first fret of the high E string. 1, 0, 3, 5, 0, A minor, add 9. I arpeggiated it, 0, 2, 4, 1, and then bar with the index finger, maintaining 4th fret of the G string. Alright, to switch it to the A add 9 chord. Now we're able to do this because we're going to be moving to D minor 7. It's very common for songwriters to throw in a major before going to the minor 4 chord in a given key. Okay, this is called a secondary dominant because A or A7 is going to be the 5 chord to D, alright, which is something that you can always throw in to sweeten up and make your progressions more interesting. Okay, so one more time. 0, 2, 4, 1, strum to the major. Next, we're moving to D minor 7. We're going to play this beautiful little passage. Alright, and that gets us into the next line of tablature. So D minor 7 chord, we're going to play this in a very interesting grip. We have frets 5, 3, 5, 3, and then we have 5 on the high E string as well. We can create the melody out of it. Hit the root note, strum the D to the B string, and then 5, 5 on the high E string. Alright, then we're going to walk down to G7 sharp 5. Okay, and the next line of tablature. Okay, you put all that together and we have, starting from the E7 chord shape, see if you can throw in a little slide away off this chord. A nice little touch here. Alright, then the D minor 7 melody. And into the next line where we're going to play.
Oh, it's kind of fast.
Alright, and then right there, that last chord, D minor 7, is the next line of tablature. Okay, so that began with a G7 sharp 5 chord. You hit the root note, then strum through, frets 3, 3, 4, 4. Next, we're going to play. That was G sharp diminished 7 with a little melody note, moving to C add 9. So this took a lot of practice getting into this shape. Basically what you're going to do is bar the 6th fret, D to high E, grab 7th fret of the G and the high E string, and also 8th fret of the high E, so that way you can strum through, and then go down a half step to create that melody. Alright, that ends on the 7th fret of the high E string, before strumming C add 9. Frets 3, 2, 0, 3, 3. Following that, we have this beautiful embellishment on the original melody. Alright, with a slide away at the end, that was 1 to 0, with a pull off, 3, 1, 0, 5. I like to kind of slide away before. Alright, I picked through a C sharp diminished 7 chord. That's frets 4, 5, 3, 5. Now remember, all these diminished chord shapes, we can move them by minor thirds, so up 4 frets. So I'm playing, and taking it up, so that way my middle finger's on fret 7, and strumming through again with that pseudo raschiato once again. Alright, so far in this line of tablature we have Alright, then We're going back to D minor 7. Here's the next line of tablature. Alright, and then that will get us into our sung verses and choruses. Okay, so I started off walking up to a D minor 7 chord. Alright, I like to play 0, 4, then I'm striking the 5th fret of the A string and then strumming a D minor 7 chord shape. So I'm fretting 5, 3, 5, 6. This is the kind of typical bossa nova version of the D minor 7 chord shape, and it's movable. You can use it to play every single minor 7 chord. So, walk down again to the G7 sharp 5. I like to strum through that chord aggressively before. Alright, playing this intense G7 flat 9 chord. Alright, I know it's a lot of chords, but this is going to be totally worth it when you get it down. So we're going to strum through. That's going to be frets 10, 9, 10, 9. Think about your basic dominant 7 chord right here. You're just adding a flat 9 to it. So, then go down to fret number 8 of the B string. 4, nice and simple. Alright, we're back to that major 7 chord shape. C sharp major 7, and then down a half step, resolving to C major 7. Alright, from there we're just going to set up the change into our sung verse, where we're going to play. Alright, B minor 7, start off hitting the low E string, then arpeggiate the chord. 7, 7, 7, 7. And then strum, E7, flat 9, and now you know that shape because we just played it off of the G note root. Right, you put that final line of music together and it should sound like this. Fly me to the moon. Alright, so on and so forth. Alright, now let's see if we can play through the entire chord melody intro. And that's going to give you plenty to practice over the course of this week. Should sound like this. Into the next part of this lesson, verse number 1. Now we're switching to rhythm.
Alright, it's really difficult. But it's not impossible. Let's fly me to some bass section, chord and rhythm.
Guitar and singing.
Fly
me to the moon and let me play among the stars. Let me see what spring is like on Jupiter and Mars. Okay, breaking that down. Basically we have one measure per chord, but there's a couple of split measures in there. We're starting off with an A minor 7 chord shape. We're going to comp on each of these chords, but there's a lot of different rhythm options. Alright, but I like the comp. We're going to play chop, 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 chop. Strumming through those chords, making sure to squeeze the hand so that way each of those chords is going to be short and detached, staccato. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now we're going to D minor 7. Again, 4 beats there. Fly me to the moon and let me. Okay, then we're on to G dominant 7. Frets 3, 3, 4, 3. And I love playing this chord with my thumb in the bass note. Play among the stars. Alright, here we're going to take a page out of Jobim's book, the famous bossa nova player. We're going to play a C major 7, 1, 2, then a G flat 7, flat 5 chord. This is optional, but it's full of flavor. Frets 2, 2, 3, 2 with the index finger, and you might remember this chord from my Girl from Ipanema guitar lesson. Alright, so just kind of throw that in there as a sneak attack chord change. Alright, then we're on to line 3 of the verse, where we're going to have F major 7. Let me see what spring is like on a Jupiter and Mars. Okay, so F major 7, frets 1, 2, 2, 1. Making sure the A string and the high E string are going to be muted. Then B minor 7, flat 5, also known as B half diminished. Switch to an E dominant 7 chord. You can play it in the open position, or right here in a C shape. Frets 7, 6, 7, 5. Just a C7 chord shape moved up to the key of E. Alright, from there, very simple, we're just going to play A minor 7 again. Some players might like to throw in A minor 7 to A dominant 7, but I really love this alternative. Throwing in an A sharp diminished 7 chord. That's going to add some tension and then drive us into the chorus where we have D minor 7. Okay, so this chord shape, that's going to be frets 6, 5, 6, 5. Alright, the E, D, G, and B. Alright, so many great chords in this song. You put all that together and we have the verse sections. Fly me to the moon and let me play among the stars. Let me see what spring is like on E7, a Jupiter and Mars.
I have to remember.
Alright, and you can throw in the open E string before going to that last chord. Alright, that's a cool little touch. Now, into the chorus section. It's going to sound like this. In other words, hold my hand. In other words, baby, kiss me. Little section there's a lot of different options in terms of what turnaround chords you use. But we started off with the D minor 7 chord that you already know. We can just play it as a bar. A 1, 2, 3, 4. G7 bar chord. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then we're gonna get fancy with it here. E minor 7. A lot of players just go right to a C major 7, but this sounds way better, and it also sounds more like the original track. E minor 7, 1, 2, 3. I'll walk up. Oh, 2, 3, 4. A sus4 to an A dominant 7 chord. So right there I played 0, 2, 2, 3.
2, 3.
Hit the root note, then strum. And then the same thing for A dominant 7. Okay, you put that together, so far we have, in other words, hold my E minor 7. A. Now line 2, in other words, G7, baby. And now we're going to end the chorus and get ourselves back to the verse. C major 7, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now here are your options. You can play the B minor 7 flat 5, and then go to E7, Alright, that'll drive us back home to A minor 7. Or we can play B minor 7 to that E7 flat 9 chord, just like we did before, to get ourselves into these sung sections. Okay, that would sound like this. In other words, baby, kiss me. Alright, into verse number 2, that's going to be verbatim. Fill my heart with song and let me sing forevermore. I love arpeggiating that G flat 7 flat 5 chord before going to the F major 7. You are all I long for, all I worship and adore. Alright, then chorus number 2. I like to switch things up here and then add a nice little ending. So, we're going to play it verbatim starting off. In other words, please be E minor 7 true. Yes, in other words. Now we can bounce back and forth between D minor 7 and G7. In other words, we can go to the E minor change. In other words, yes, in back to D minor 7. Other words, G dominant 7. I love. Now we need to close up shop. Check it out. Way to end this song. Again, this is kind of my interpretation of the tune, so you can take from this what you will. I'm having the C major 7 chord arpeggiating, moving my root note up so it turns it into a C sharp diminished, going up to the D minor 7 chord, then playing that intense G dominant 7 sharp 5 that we learned earlier before, recycling that F major 7 chord shape and bringing it up to C, frets 8, 9, 9, 8. From there you can play this optional lick. Alright, so I strum a little piece of the C major 7 chord. Alright, so that is 9, 8, 7. Next we're going to descend, pulling off 10, 8, 7. Alright, then the B string 10, 8, 6, 5, G string, back to the B string 5th fret. Put that together, we have 4, strumming or sliding up in to a C6 chord. Probably C6 add 9 is the right name for this chord. That's frets 3, 2, 2, 3, 3. Alright, you put that together and we have the ending of the tune.
It's nice but difficult to
just like that, you're ready to perform.
Alright, it's really nice, but also really difficult to remember. Maybe I need to understand the chord progression and voicing and some feeling like. And maybe the chord tone of the phrase. This is one by one chord progression, scale, and voicing. And that might help understand, like thinking in chunk of information like chord and lead chord melody on the scale. Alright, thank you for watching. Subscribe and subscribe. Let's play Fly Me to the Moon together. I run the song and chords. I can run from sound guitar lessons with Jared. Fly Me to the Moon guitar chord, tab, melody and scale. Shuffle of top 25 jazz standards for guitar.
I always like to look at the melody on the lead sheet first before I just demonstrate it for you, and I will show you it on the guitar with tabs on the screen so you'll see exactly where you can practice playing it. But what we want to look for here is just how much does it go outside of a key, which means how many accidentals are there. Accidentals are the sharps or the flats that are before notes. Well, here there would be a key signature. There's nothing there. There's no flats or sharps there, so we're in the key of C. So this is all C major. No accidental. C major, C major. Ah, here's an accidental. That's G sharp, goes outside of the scale. We'll talk about this in the scale section for improvisation, but this scale that it's borrowing from is A harmonic minor. And if you're watching even a few videos of this series, you're going to get really comfortable with harmonic minor. It's the second most important scale to learn after major. You can get away with improvising over all of these standards by just playing two scales, major and harmonic minor. Harmonic minor is essential because the dominant 7 chord that leads to a minor chord is being borrowed from the harmonic minor scale. So that's what that note is changing, and it's a very essential sound. It really is nice when it's baked into a melody like this. Okay, here's another accidental that goes outside of the key. Well, this is doing nothing in particular other than just being a passing tone. It's going from C to C sharp to D. So that's kind of a nice reminder that we can add in between notes when we're playing melodies or improvising or whatever we want, add an in-between note that passes from one to the next. But here we have all just C major, all just C major, all just C major. Here's that same accidental here, here's that same accidental here. So mostly just C major. And you know, when a song like this is kind of a pop song jazz standard, that's what is to be expected, that most of these chords are pretty just hanging out in one scale. And you'll see why that is an advantage for getting into being able to improvise over this, and it's a disadvantage for in some ways because it makes it a little harder to follow the changes since we don't have to follow the changes. And if you work on a few lessons in this series, you'll see what I mean, the difference between that. I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit by talking about all that theory here because I get excited about it, but let's go to a demonstration of the scales you want to practice to make learning the melody so much easier. I often will teach a melody this way where I say, hey, here's the scales it comes from. Play them up and down in a certain position. Then you'll have a way easier time learning and remembering the melody. So let me show you those scales and then I'll give you the melody demonstration with tabs. So here's the C major scale up and down. I'm going to start on the root and repeat the root when I get to roots and land on the root at the end. That's what I call the root to root method. I have a scales playlist on how to play any scale and learn all the positions of it in the description. There's a whole playlist, every scale type you could want to know, mapping it all out that way. Here's the C major scale in the position that I want you to learn it for this song. Here is the A harmonic minor scale that would be beneficial to know as well because the melody is going to borrow directly from this scale. Now I'll play you the Fly Me to the Moon melody, and I encourage you to use this section to play along with my demonstration until you have it down. It's a really great way to practice. There will be guitar tab and notation on the screen as I play, so you can see exactly where on the fretboard I recommend first learning how to play this melody. Here is the Fly Me to the Moon melody at 150 beats per minute. show you the chord shapes that you can play. Let's just look at this for a second. Also, when I showed you the melody, it was cut off. This is also a chromatic note out of the key, but that's just a passing tone as well. Thought I'd say that since this was cut off before. All of these chords almost all of them are just in C major. So it's just very much in one key. This goes outside of the key for a second, which we talked about. So that's borrowing from A harmonic minor. It's leading to A minor. And you see all of these here. Those are just quick chords that are just harmonically doing that same thing. It's going out of the key to lead to the next chord. It causes a little tension for like 2 beats, very quick, and then lands on targeting this next chord. So this is 6, 2, 5, 1. This is targeting then the 5 of this chord, which is the 4 of C major, all very much C major. And then this is a 2, 5, 1 in A minor. And then again, this is just a really quick chord that leads to here. So all of those function as causing tension very quickly, and you could play it without those in there. It does sound really good to have them in there, but it's not like quintessential stuff. It's a little insight into jazz harmony in general. A lot of jazz harmony is adding a lot of this that the melody itself doesn't need to be supported, but it creates more harmonic tension and resolution that improvisers like to play over, and that just give it a lot of more harmonic interest that's going on. Let's jump to actually showing you the chord shapes. Now I'll play you 2 different versions of the Fly Me to the Moon guitar chords. I'll play you each chord once each time a chord changes, and I'll show you the chord shape diagrams on the screen. I encourage you to practice along with these demonstrations as you're working on getting the chords down. First, I'll play you the chords using the simplest chord shapes possible. These are often called shell voicings, and they are widely used in jazz. Here's a demonstration of that at 150 beats per minute. Now I'll play you the most common guitar shapes for Fly Me to the Moon. These have an extra note in them and they fill out the sound a little more. This demonstration is at 150 beats per minute also. Next, I'll show you 2 different options for the scales you need to be able to improvise and solo over the Fly Me to the Moon chord progression. I'll demonstrate and show diagrams of all the scales I'm playing in one specific overlapping position on the fretboard, which is where I highly recommend that you first learn how to improvise with these scales before worrying about mastering other scale positions on the fretboard. So this is my complete
Let's play scale on Fly Me to the Moon.
scale sheet showing you what scales every chord comes from, which are the scales that you can use to accurately improvise over a chord progression. We talked about how these chords are in C major mostly, so C major scale is what these chords come from, so therefore C major scale is the scale to improvise melodies from. These little quick moments here, we'll talk about the scales that they come from. So C7 is the 5 chord of the key of F, so the scale we can play there is called C mixolydian, which is the same thing as the F major scale. scale. Makes sense. It's going to F. It's the 5 chord of C. F major scale is actually what it's from. It's borrowing a chord from the key of F. So of course, F major scale. C Mixolydian is the mode version. It just means it's F major scale with C as the root. So you can call it either one of those things if you want to, and think of it as either one of those things. Quick note though, and that is that when chords are happening so quickly, I often use just chord tones. Not only chord tones, but I think about and target and play around the chord tones rather than the scale. I'll still play scale notes around the chord tones, but I'm mostly thinking of the skeleton of the chord itself. The chord tones, the root of the chord, third of the chord, fifth of the chord, seventh of the chord, have those all mapped out on the guitar. However, the scale approach is what I want to teach you about here, and then we'll talk about how to avoid these if you want to avoid them. So keep that in mind, and I'll talk more about chord tones in a little bit, and I talk about it a lot on my channel, so there will be links in the description to learn more about that. So very briefly, C Mixolydian. Back to C major. This chord here has to be from A harmonic minor. It is just borrowed from that. You're going to get really comfortable with that if you work on several videos in this series, because it's just happening all the time. Harmonic minor scale is the second most important scale to be able to play with. You can do everything else with C major scale. So A natural minor for just 2 beats here. That's the A minor chord, and then it switches here. The scale this comes from is D melodic minor. Even though I just said you can play major scale and harmonic minor and play over almost any standard, technically this chord comes from D melodic minor. There's a bit of a theory explanation for why that is, because it has a flat 13 and a natural 9, and that's when D melodic minor in this case would be the scale. Don't worry about why, that's some in-depth stuff, but you can learn all about melodic minor with the links in the description to my scales series. But that is the scale. I'll show you all these scales, and then we'll strip it down and make it simpler. So C major, so refreshing, just C major there, and then D melodic minor again. This is supposed to be E7 flat 9, and that's coming from A harmonic minor, C major, C major. So look at this, so much C major, and then these little moments. A harmonic minor, D melodic minor, all that stuff we talked about before. These 2 chords come from A harmonic minor. So let's go over all those scales. I will just show them to you in the 5th position and play them up and down for you with scale diagrams on the screen. When teaching scales, I often teach the root to root method, where you start on a root, you end on a root, you repeat all the roots to hear where the root is. In this case, I'm just going to show you the collection of notes as a scale position, because C major scale, for example, we're playing it over A minor, D minor, G minor. We're playing it over all these chords. So the root of those chords is really the home base note at any point. So you just think of it as a collection of notes you can improvise with. So here's C major. Here's C Mixolydian, which is 1 note different. That's the same thing as F major. Here's A harmonic minor. Here's A natural minor, which is the same thing as C major. I'll play it again anyway. A natural minor just means it's C major, but A is the root. So you can just think of it as C major again. Here's D melodic minor. Here is, actually that's all of them. Those are the complete scales to work on for this song. Let's move on to the simple scales. So for every song we can do the complete version of scales, and that's every scale that every chord comes from. And I always like to point out a simplified version too, where you can just ignore stuff. And believe me, really serious jazz musicians are doing this all the time. All the time. Who cares? This happens for 2 beats. You don't have to target that. You can, though. It sounds tasty. The goal in the end is to play what you want to hear, right? To do it when you want to hear it, to ignore it when you want to ignore it. But to get into playing the song successfully, which should be your #1 goal, you can ignore it. And this is both a blessing and a curse, because it makes it really easy. Look at this. The simplified scales of this song is all C major, because that's just 2 beats. You just ignore it. And the scale it comes from is 1 note different from C major. The scale this comes from is 1 note different from C major, right? So you can try to avoid that 1 different note, or you can just let it be what it is. So the trickiest thing here now is playing ideas that sound good with your phrasing. You might want to work on some chord tone improvisation to outline the chords a little bit, because those all come from the scales too. But to say C major, okay, most people are just going to sound like they're playing a scale then. So you really got to break up your rhythm. You really got to try to play something tasty. I have a lesson about phrasing that I'll put a link to in the description. So blessing and a curse, because it gets you in. Yeah, get in there, play it. Also, you might lose where you are in the song really easily, because all you're thinking is C major the whole time. Where are you in the song? Whereas having to change keys at certain points can help with knowing where you are in the song. So, like I said, blessing and a curse, but no excuse to not get in there and play with it. You might want to start targeting just this harmonic minor scale only and still ignore these, for a while. So now you understand the complete scales and the simplified scales, and next I will improvise and give you a demonstration of improvising through this. I'll do a little bit of ignoring and a little bit of targeting. Sometimes I'll just try to play, relatively simply with C major, so you hear an example of improvising through the form. Here we go. In every lesson in this series, I will give you a unique tip on how to internalize jazz standards and know them more deeply and really level up your musicianship. For this lesson, it's very appropriate that I recommend that you know your chord tones. I'm huge on mapping out chord tones, improvising with chord tones, knowing them inside and out. And yes, we're talking about scales mostly for this series, kind of because I've talked about chord tone improvisation so much on my channel. So check out my chord tone improvisation playlist and the lessons with the link in the description if you want to. But we'll talk about it here for a second. It's pretty simple in concept. It's that you want to know just the notes that are from the chord in one position on the fretboard, in that one, what I call the slim approach, single location improv method, as close to the 5th fret as possible, and then be able to improvise with those chord tones. Then when you think of scales, you can play melodies around the chord tones, but you can always kind of know where you are, and you can hear, even when I'm demonstrating a very simple improvisation, I'm really doing a lot of that. So I'll demonstrate for you with just chord tones here as well. That first chord is A minor 7. So I know my chord tone arpeggio shape right here in this position for that. But I want to point something out. This is the case with a lot of these masterfully crafted jazz standards that have stood the test of time. The melody is outlining the chord tones on its own. It's really targeting it. The first melody note starts on the 3rd of A minor. So here's that A minor arpeggio. Okay, the first melody note is here. And it lands right when D minor happens. It lands on the 3rd of D minor. So it starts on the 3rd of A minor, lands on the 3rd of D minor, it goes to the 3rd of G7, lands on the 3rd of C major 7. That's the 3rd of F. That's the 3rd of B minor 7 flat 5. That's the 3rd of E7, and on. You get what I'm saying. Wow, okay. And it's not just about the fact that it's the 3rd. This is obviously really intentionally crafted. It's why it's so catchy. It's why it sounds so good. But more importantly, whether it's the 3rd or some other chord tone, melodies are doing this all the time, and we want to see that. Oh, it's in the chord. Oh, it's in the chord. Oh, it's in the chord. It's so helpful. And then our improvisations ideally want to be doing that as well. So I know my D minor 7 arpeggio shape. I know my G7 in that same position. I know my C major 7. I know my C dominant 7. I know F major 7.
I'm not sure.
All right there. I know my
need
B half diminished, or B minor 7 flat 5. I know my E7. Oh, you can kind of hear the harmony of the song now. Okay, so now I'll just demonstrate improvising just with chord tones, simply. And this is a huge undertaking. Don't think it's easy. It's not easy. It's simple in the kind of vision to have for it, but it just takes a long time. I knew about this for years before I kind of could start to do it, and I made a system for speeding up the process for myself, and I teach that in some of my courses and stuff. But just planning the idea for you, man, if I know my chord tones in that one space, the same place where I'm learning scales, the same location where I'm learning to improvise and learning the melody, if I know the chord tones, that's going to make everything so much easier and make you sound a little tastier when you're improvising, even if you just barely get started on targeting a couple of those here and there. So here's my demonstration of improvising through the form just with chord tones, and I do have a lesson all about this, and it's on Fly Me to the Moon with some more in-depth stepping stones to get started. If you want to get started on this, there are ways to do it that's easier than just trying to dive in and get overwhelmed. You can start with a couple strings at a time, and I break that down in that lesson, so please check out that lesson. I think it's called something like How to Get Started Improvising with Chord Tones. Here's my demonstration. My Fly Me to the Moon listening recommendation in 1 second, but first, we just talked about chord tones. If you really want to work on that, I have a chord tone vocabulary pack. It's all the arpeggio shapes for 12 different chord types, all the chord types you need to improvise over and learn your chord tones for literally any jazz chord progression, and all for free. I say this in every video in this series because it's so important. It's kind of the point of this. I want you to be playing real music, and then all of the esoteric exercises and drills and stuff can apply to something real that you are playing. You want to be able to play a complete version of a song. Play the melody, play the chords, and improvise a solo over it, even if you think it sounds terrible. This is the best goal to have. It will rapidly improve your playing. It'll clarify how you want to sound, and it will clarify what you need to work on, where your gaps are, where the issues are. Plus then, like I said, it gives you a place to apply all the lessons and exercises that are out there so you can play better jazz guitar. And when you're ready to level up and work on some of those more advanced concepts, other than the many links I mentioned throughout this series, I've also compiled a supplementary lesson playlist to help you sound more advanced when playing jazz standards. It covers the chord tone improvisation, like we talked about, chromaticism, advanced chord voicings, different scale types. Browse that whenever you're ready. Listening to the songs we're working on is super important, and I believe in finding one version of a song and listening to that a bunch, rather than making a playlist of like 20 versions of the same song. You want to absorb one version of it because it imprints into your mind and your ears much better that way, and you'll just fall in love with that version, and it'll start to affect your playing faster than if you listen to many versions of the same song. So find one that you love, and I'll recommend one for every song in this whole series. For this song, for Fly Me to the Moon, there's so many versions, and so many, well, excuse me for saying this, bad versions, because it's so popular, and, it depends on what you're looking for when you're looking. There's just so many cheesy versions, I should say, really poppy versions. The version that I highly recommend, that I just love more than any other version of this tune, is actually a bossa nova version on Astrud Gilberto's album. I don't remember what the album is called. Anyway, and I believe Antonio Carlos Jobim is playing guitar. I think He's playing guitar on this, and he's the renowned bossa nova composer that wrote hit after hit in the bossa nova world. And so the guitar is a little subtle in that recording, but it's just lovely to listen to, and the overall song arrangement, singing, everything is just absolutely gorgeous. So if you want a more guitar-centric version, then you can check out Wes Montgomery's version of Fly Me to the Moon. That's the other one I recommend if you want to hear really someone, soloing on it on the guitar. Make sure you listen to one of those or any other different version that you like. Frank Sinatra version is great too while you are listening to this song. And I have a playlist in the description that is my listening list, and I'll be adding to that as this series is moving forward, so you can find it there if you want to, or look it up anywhere else. Make sure you're subscribed, because I can't wait to see you in my next lesson, where we'll do song number 5 of the top 25 jazz standards for guitar players.
Right to the moon.